Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of Azure Demystified. My name is Muditha.
And I'm Gihan. Mudita, can you believe that a week flew by since our first episode?
Has it? Oh man, it felt like yesterday since we did our first episode. Even though this is our technically this is our first episode. That
Mhm.
was just the pilot, the introduction to channel, but
Yep.
it felt so good to finally have this channel launched. And thank you to everyone who watched our introduction video, subscribe to the channel. I promise you, you won't regret it. We have a lot of episodes planned throughout this year to release and a lot of content to discuss as well.
Indeed, again, thank you very much to everyone who watched the first episode and also subscribed.
So we are formally going to start Azure Demystified channel today. Um, I would say the technical content. Um, we, yeah, as I said, we did the first episode, the pilot, but now this is going to be the technically the first episode of the channel uh, that we are going to start talking about the technical stuff, the good stuff that you guys are waiting for.
Yep. So, absolutely. What are we going to talk about today, Mudita?
So we promised our viewers last time that we are going to dedicate the first couple of episodes to Azure Cloud Adoption Framework. So let's start with the Cloud Adoption Framework, shall we?
Fantastic. So, let's start talking about what is exactly meant by the word CAF.
So CAF stands for Cloud Adoption Framework. So the Microsoft um, uh, developed this the Cloud Adoption Framework or the framework with the help of the engineers, partners, and customers combined. So they looked at how customers were deploying resources into Microsoft Azure, how the engineers were deploying or helping customers and partners, how partners were deploying resources on behalf of the customer. So I would say in its core, it is a set of best practices and guidance gathered through the experience of all these parties. And it is a proven set of guidance and best practices that any organization can use to confidently adopt the cloud and achieve the desired business outcomes of the investment. So one of the reasons behind the cloud adoption framework was that customers and partners were hoping for a um, what are the industry standards around deploying resources into Microsoft Azure? What are the best practices or the industry standards around adopting the cloud footprint, right? So for several years, there were no frameworks or industry standards as such, if you will. So Microsoft came up with this plan to create this best practices and guidance to help out all three parties involved in this journey, both all of the parties like the Microsoft engineers, partners, and customers alike. So anybody who's about to get started with Microsoft Azure, they can get uh, they can make use of the cloud adoption framework for Microsoft Azure, and then have a good starting point in their cloud journey, as well as throughout the life cycle of their cloud journey as well.
Yeah, Mudita, can you tell the viewers the target audience for the framework and walk us through the phases of the framework?
So before we talk about the target audience, we let's talk about the cloud in general, right? Microsoft Azure in general. So there are many options and ways someone can get started with Microsoft Azure. The simplest way, if you have a credit card, you can go to the Azure portal, sign up for a subscription, type in your card information, and then you're good to go. So you can start deploying resources, the virtual machines, web apps, storage accounts, virtual networks, pretty much everything that you want to do in Microsoft Azure, you can do with just signing up for a subscription. but that's not the best way to adopt Microsoft Azure or any cloud platform for that matter. There has to be a way that you can get the maximum out of your investment. I mean, if you have an unlimited budget, oh yeah, so you can just go in and deploy whatever you want and be done with it. But when organizations have strict budgets and they have strict requirements and business needs to get out of that investment that they put towards subscribing to a cloud service, um, there has to be a proper way to do that implementation. So the cloud adoption framework, it helps customers or businesses rather to clearly understand how or understand or rather learn how best they can utilize the Microsoft Azure and what can they do to get the maximum out of their investment that they make. So with that thought in our mind, the cloud adoption framework really targets the cloud architects, business decision makers, the C-level executives, directors, managers, and so on. And the reason why it targets that audience is that cloud architects, they need the technical guidance as to how best they can deploy a resource, or how can they design a solution to be deployed in Microsoft Azure. For business managers, the leadership, it helps them to understand how or whether the investment that they're making towards Microsoft Azure will provide a return to their organization. Will it benefit their organization, right? Uh, Having said that, the cloud adoption framework is not just for architects and business decision makers. It is for anyone and everyone. So even if you are a technician, or even if you are a help desk support technician, even you can get the knowledge or the awareness of what Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework and how it helps the organization by going through the Cloud Adoption Framework. You could be a support desk staff, you could be in the support staff in the organization of your organization, and then if somebody comes in and asks you to deploy a resource in Microsoft Azure, then having gone through the cloud adoption framework yourself, it really helps you to understand what are the best practices involved with deploying that particular resource. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it is only for the most senior people in the industry, like the architects, or even for the leadership of your organization. It is for anyone and everyone. So let's take a quick look at what Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework is, and we'll try to get this bird eye view where we try to get a holistic view of what the Cloud Adoption Framework is. So the structure is very standard. It is pretty straightforward. There are 6 main steps involved with the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework. So the first one in this cloud adoption framework is the strategy. So in the strategy phase, what you are going to do is you're going to define the business justification, and you're going to list down what you expect out of this investment that you make on the Microsoft Azure platform. So why do you need, so when it comes to the business justification, why do you need to adopt Microsoft Azure? What reasons that you have that prevents you from using your existing resources? Or is it because you cannot grow your business? Is it because you do not have the capacity to deploy additional resources that require? So basically, the defining strategies phase is where you're going to come up with this justification towards why the business needs to invest in Microsoft Azure, and what are you expecting out of that investment. So once you have set the strategy, then you move to the planning stage or the planning phase. So this planning phase, it aligns actionable adoption plan to your business outcomes. So why this basically means that when you adopt Microsoft Azure, what business outcomes are you expecting out of it, and how are you going to achieve those? So this is the stage that you're going to analyze your current digital state, the people who need to be involved, what needs to be moved, the skill gap, and then you will come up with this single action plan with a single source of truth that will that will stay throughout the cloud journey. And then the ready state. So in this ready state or the ready phase, you're going to prepare your people, processes, environment, your everything about the IT landscape, even not just the IT landscape, just everything about your business is going to be changed in some way when you're going to adopt a cloud solution. So uh, during the plan, during the the second phase, which is planning, you have assessed your current digital state, who are the people need to be involved, and what needs to be moved, the skill gap and stuff. So the skill gap basically defines whether your organization has the staff that can perform the migration, that can move your workloads to Microsoft Azure. If you do not, then how are you going to get support for that? And the current digital state, it determines the amount of workloads that needs to be migrated. So you're going to prepare them. So do you need to, if, for example, if we take a file share, do you need to move everything that is stored in the file share, or do you need to move just a portion of it? Do you need all the historical data that users have stored in the file share? And then people who need to be involved. You do not need to involve everyone in your organization. You need a dedicated subset of your IT department, and then key users or rather stakeholders from each department or each workload or application that you're trying to move to Microsoft Azure involved in that. So with that, you will prepare you will prepare yourself to move on to the next phase. So the next phase is adopt. This is where you're going to migrate your workloads into Microsoft Azure. So in the previous stage, the ready, basically you will understand during the previous two stages actually. During the plan and ready stage, you will have figured out what are the workloads that you need to migrate and how are you going to migrate. So, for example, if there are applications that you can migrate as it is, pretty easy. But if you have legacy applications that needs either you have to develop the application entirely, or you can just make a couple of changes here and there, then you will do those changes during the adopt stage, and then you will migrate those workloads into the Azure environment. So once the migration once you have migrated your workloads, you will implement changes across your IT and business process, where how users are accessing the applications, what are the new processes that you have to put in place to deploy new resources or make modifications, and so on. And now we have talked about 4 different stages in the cloud adoption framework. Now, there are 2 more stages. We talked about 6 stages. So there are 2 more stages. These 2 stages are very important as much as these 4 stages that we have talked about. So those 2 stages are govern and manage. From when you start the planning, and then they go on beyond the adoption throughout your life cycle in Microsoft Azure. So the govern and manage. So the govern phase, that determines how your environment is going to be be in compliant with the regulations, laws, and other certifications that you need to acquire. So if you are in the health industry, then depending on the region where your organization is, you will have to comply to different health related regulations in terms of the data security and protection. If you are into financial industry, then you will have different sets of rules and regulations that you have to comply with. And so how are you going to comply with these regulations in your organization when you move to Microsoft Azure? And then you have to think about how you're going to control your environment as well. How are you going to provide access to resources? How are you going to distribute the responsibility of deploying or managing or performing necessary um, maintenance on your resources? So that will define that. And then the security aspect of it. So just using role-based access control, or just making sure that only the IT department users can have access to the resources doesn't necessarily mean that your footprint is secure. So in this case, you will have to figure out how are you going to mitigate security threats from not only from the outside world, and how are you going to mitigate threats from the inside. What are you going to implement additionally into your environment, and so on. So you will have to think about the compliance, the control, and security aspect when it comes to the governance. And then the management aspect. In the management aspect, this is a step that you continue to provide, where you are going to this is where how we are going to define how your organization is going to use Microsoft Azure and optimize these resources throughout their life cycle. Because once you deploy these resources for the first time in Microsoft Azure, they might not be in their best state, or in the sense the specifications or the performance might not be the best suited to the business investment. Either you have over provisioned resources, or you may have under provisioned resources, or you have granted access to a group of users, probably during the development of an application, or during the migration process, or you may have not, and then you have to trim down that access to make sure that only the necessary people will access it. Likewise, you will have to keep looking at your environment, operate that, and then optimize as you progress through the cloud journey. It not only helps with the security aspect of your footprint, it also helps with the application health, the workload health, and the cost that it incurs to the organization as well. You might save several $1,000s compared to a non-optimized environment with the same amount of resources deployed. So now some of the information that we talked here. So this is the 6 main stages involved with the cloud adoption framework. So there are additional information. If you need additional information, if you want to really deep dive into cloud adoption framework, you can actually navigate to the cloud adoption framework website, where Microsoft has put this beautiful um, set of information. So this is the homepage of Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure. In this page, you will have links to a huge amount of information across all the stages that we have talked about. You have access to the tools, how you can build your skills, where you can find help if you need so. Um, just go to this link. We will put this link down in the description, and you can have a look at yourself.
Thanks, Mudde. That was excellent information that you shared.
Yeah, so we just had a bird's eye view of what Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework is. If we were to really go into my cloud adoption framework, 30 minutes won't be enough. We will have to go. We can
Yeah.
go for like hours and hours discussing the content. But quick um, highlight to what I have discussed here. One of the questions that we most of the time get from our customers is that, is cloud adoption framework all about documentation? Is it just the documentation? Do we have to go through all of these documentation? Are there anything else that would make it easier for us to understand the process, or get even to get started real quick
Mhm.
rather than going through this information?
Yeah. That's a very valid question. I will definitely step into answering this question for you. So when I started off with the cloud adoption framework, I was going through the documentation, and I was also thinking of the same thing. Right? Is this just loads of documentation? How is this really going to help me adopt the cloud?
Yeah,
Right?
I mean,
So
sorry to interrupt,
yeah,
Gihan. So we are not. I mean,
no, no, no.
even for ourselves, we are not very
Yeah,
keen on going through documentation, right? So we would
exactly.
like to
Yeah.
put our hands in the cookie jar and then get into trouble.
Exactly. So at the face of it, it just looks like documentation. So what we are going to discuss now is about the tools that are available, tools and the templates that are available, that is going to make your life so much easy. So I mean, if I started off going through these tools before I went through the documentation, it would have also made more sense to me, because the documentation uh, alone doesn't help you through the process. The questions in these tools help you to guide your focus in the areas that you're not aware of. Right? It broadens your horizons, and then it draws you into the specific phase in the cap, and that really helps drive in the point. So let's take a look at some of these tools that are available. There are loads of tools, so we'll try to cover most of it, and the rest we will share the links, and you guys can go and take a look at it. So let's start off with the Microsoft assessments. These are Q&A type tools, trying to understand where the customer is and to get pointed to the right place to start at. Right? So starting off, we have the cloud journey tracker. So what this helps is, so each customer has a unique cloud journey. Like some will move certain resources, some will just move just uh, apps into the cloud, some will just move the VMs and the IaaS services into cloud. So each of the customers will have a different cloud journey. Some will have a mix of everything, right? So what the cloud journey tracker really tries to do is it identifies your cloud adoption needs and tries to give you recommendations for your unique cloud journey, right? So after going through this, you will be able to identify where you need to improve in terms of the discussed methodologies. So planning phase, strategy phase, what you can do to improve in each phase can be identified by going through this. The next tool we have is the strategic migration assessment and readiness tool. So this tool is about your preparedness to do cloud migration at scale, whether you have the skills and the resources, or have an idea of what you need to implement, whether you have looked at all the angles and the aspects of the cloud journey. So it will give you a broader perspective of the cloud journey. Next, we have the governance benchmark. This will try to identify the gaps. So identify the gaps in the current governance, and it will try to give you recommendations on how to close those gaps. So these three tools are very vital. In addition to that, we have other tools and templates that support our journey. So one other tool that is going to help you is the cloud adoption plan template. So we'll quickly look at that. Right? So in this, it talks about your strategy. It will list down your strategy and the motivations, your business outcomes. You will list down the business justification, and what your stakeholders are, what their role is, how we are going to plan the digital estate, the types of workloads you're going to migrate, the priority of it, and the owners of it, because we definitely need to list down the owners uh, in a migration, so that they will be the ones who are going to drive that. They need to have the skill level to manage after the resource is migrated into the cloud environment. So all that needs to be taken into account. If they don't have the skill level, this document also takes into account the readiness of an individual. So you can list down, okay, for this individual we need this level of expertise. He or she may need to skill up on the certifications that is related to this, and all this will be listed down in this document. So that was about the cloud adoption plan template. That's going to help you building out the plan for the planning phase. And now we're going to talk about the Azure DevOps plan generator. So Azure DevOps is basically a tool or the platform that Microsoft has provided to manage an application's entire life cycle, right? So what the DevOps plan generator is it's going to import uh, the plan for the migration into Azure DevOps. So one of the components of Azure DevOps is project management. So what it's going to do is it's going to import all the user stories into Azure DevOps, and then this is not a custom user story, so you will need to customize this according to your migration needs. But once you get this customized for your organization's needs, you can drive the migration just through this, using it as the project management tool. So another tool that we have is something called Azure Blueprints. Azure Blueprints and the landing zone, we will dive deeper into the upcoming videos. We will explain to you what these are and what it is. But just for your basic understanding right now, the landing zone is your basic foundational environment. You can call it the minimum viable product. So it's going to be your basic foundation that you're going to deploy all your resources on top of. So like when building a house, that's the foundation that you're talking about. So that's the landing zone. When it comes to Azure Blueprints is a you could call it a function or tool in Azure that is going to help you deploy resources according to your liking. So if you look at the screen that is uh, on right now, you can see that you have samples of blueprints already provided for you. So you have the CAF foundation already built into the blueprint section, right? If you don't want to take that route, you can of course start from a blank document and create everything from scratch. So that is up to your liking, but you have those options available as well in Azure Blueprints. So then we have the next tool, the enterprise scale landing zone. So these are templates that are available if somebody wants a very rich initial implementation of Azure. So this is not for everyone. This is if you want to go with all the bells and whistles. That's the option you will take. Then you also have the option for anybody who is familiar with Terraform. You can use the Terraform module to manage and deploy resources into Azure. So that will definitely help with the automation of the build. We have more tools when it comes to the deployment of Azure, and that is going to help with the deployment. For each phase, there are different tools. So what I would recommend is, if you are in a particular phase, let's say you're in the strategy phase, I would say go with the tools that are defined for the strategy phase. When it comes to the planning phase, go with the tools that are defined for the planning phase. And by getting the results out of those tools, then walk through the cafe area. That will give you the best of both worlds. So first go through with the tools, and then move into the cafe area relevant documentation to get a better idea of it. So all these links we will provide you in the description below, and please take a look. It'll definitely help you. So, Mudita, if someone needs help in this journey, when even though this documentation and there are loads of tools available, what can they really do?
Of course, yeah, and that's a very valid question. Now, y- you might be thinking that when looking at the cloud adoption framework and the information that we have discussed in this episode, that you would have to do this all alone by yourself. That is not the case. You can definitely get help from Microsoft services or various Microsoft programs available to help customers who are adopting Microsoft Azure, or else you can even go to Microsoft partners who would help organizations to migrate their workloads into Microsoft Azure. So when choosing a Microsoft partner, you would have to really think about how that partner suits your requirements, the expertise the partner has, because when it comes to Microsoft Azure migrations, there are so many resources or the services that you can use in Microsoft Azure, the infrastructure as a service solutions, platform as a service solution. So look into your vendor or the partner whether they have experience conducting the kind of migrations that your organization looking to get done, and look at the number of look at the number of projects that they have done in the past, and if possible get customer references as well. So that way you can find a good partner to help you with your migration, and not even just the migration, even for the life cycle of your cloud adoption or the cloud journey. You can get help from that partner um, for your organization.
Since we talked about selecting a partner, that's a good entry point to our sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by Lunavi, an IT consulting firm and an MSP that helps organizations achieve digital transformations from the data center to DevOps. Lunavi offers a broad range of services from cloud enablement and infrastructure modernization to leading app development and data analytics services. Lunavi's expert consultants and support staff extend your IT team to deliver next generation technology in a better way. Not only delivering solutions but also sharing knowledge so you leave every engagement with stronger operations than you started. Learn more by visiting www.lunavi.com today.
Full disclosure, both Gihan and I work at Lunavi as solution consultants. Lunavi generously helped us to bring this episode and the channel to you guys. However, the thoughts and opinions that we discuss in this episode are our own. Also, they do not reflect the thoughts and opinions of our employer or its partners. And even though the Lunavi helped us bring this episode, they have not influenced us in any way to talk about anything. So everything that we discuss here will be our raw thoughts and opinions that have not been influenced or altered otherwise. So with that, it brings today's episode to a wrap.
So, on our next episode, we will be discussing the strategy and the planning, the first two phases of the CAF, where we will be looking at how best we can deploy management groups, subscriptions, resource groups, naming conventions, and some of the thinking behind it. We will be looking at the total cost of ownership and other things. So, it's going to be a show packed with information that will help you along your cloud journey.
Exciting times ahead, isn't it, Gihan?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
folks, comment below to let us know your feedback or email us to team@azure-demystified.com. Links to all of the resources that we discussed in this episode will be put down in the description down below the video. Subscribe to the channel, spread the word, and stay tuned for our next episode. This episode will be posted onto our blog parallelly as well, so you can go and read about the cloud adoption framework there as well. So until we meet you again next week with a brand new episode. Have a good rest of the week, and take care.
Goodbye.